All right, I don't have a fun, really fun name for this deck. It is one of the more classic decks in the format, and it is simply Pattern Hulk. So let's get into it. So starting with the points in the deck, and maybe one of the reasons why I'm returning to this deck a little bit. 4 for Demonic Tutor, 3 for Natural Order, 2 for Protean Hulk, and 1 for Umezawa's Jite. Now, when I used to play this deck, these were the points. I had a crop rotation in it because it was 0. This was for... No, DT actually was 3. Natural Order was 4, and Protean Hulk was 3. But recently, or fairly recently, about a month ago, Natural Order went down a point. Protean Hulk went down a point. Umezawa's Jite went down a point. So that let me basically squeeze in a free JIT, which I didn't expect to be able to do again. So now we're at this nice 10-point spread, and I thought, okay, well, I basically gained 3 points here, so let's see how we can make the list work. So I think I'm going to start probably by going over some of the Protean Hulk lines. All right, let's talk about Protean Hulk for a second. Now, this is what a lot of the deck revolves around, is getting a Protean Hulk into play. So in our first scenario, we'll just say we cast it for 7 mana. When it's put into a graveyard from play, so when it dies, you may search your library for any number of creature cards with total mana value 6 or less, put them into play, then shuffle. So a lot of what we're going to do to kill our opponent will revolve around getting this guy into play, and then sacrificing him in some manner. In this case, we use a Phyrexian Tower, sack him, we have 2 black mana. Now, when he dies, there's that trigger, and we get to find 6 CMC of creatures. So let's just pretend we had nothing on the board, just those 7 lands. Maybe what we could find is these 6. So this will give us infinite life. We can sack the Kitchen Finks. It persists, and it persists with 1 less -1 counter. So you can keep sacrificing it. Your Carrion Feeder gets very large. Your Kitchen Finks stays a 3/2, and you gain 2 life every time you put a counter on the Carrion Feeder. So that's one of the lines from nothing. Now, if you already have something like a Carrion Feeder in play, or one of our other sacrifice outlets, here's a couple: Viscera Seer, a Cartilla Aristocrat, a Woe Strider, Viral's the Scar Striped. Any of these would work. If you have any of those, we'll just put it back to the Carrion Feeder in play. Well, you can find 6 other points. So you could still find the Vizier, and then instead of finding Kitchen Finks, you could find a Murderous Redcap. Now, the exact same state is here, except in this case, we get to shoot our opponent for this 2 damage every time they're coming back. So those are the 2 easiest piles in how we win. We either, infinite life from nowhere, or just shoot our opponent down. I'm going to get into some more of the complex piles right now. All right, so here we have a similar situation. This is our designated graveyard, the Vizier and the Murderous Redcap. We've got a Protean Hulk in play, no sacrifice outlet, nothing else. We're going to sacrifice it. So we can find 6 CMC. We'll find a Karmic Guide and a Carrion Feeder. Karmic Guide comes into play. We can return the Protean Hulk due to its ETB effect. And then we could say, oh, well, let's sacrifice the Protean Hulk again. This time, we're going to find a Revelark. So now we have a Revelark, a Carrion Feeder, and the Karmic Guide in play. You can find 1 more CMC if something doesn't really matter. We'll just throw this under here. And Revelark has an interesting ability. When it leaves the battlefield, you can return 2 creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to play. Well, we have 2 right here. So I could sacrifice the Revelark, return these 2, and then have the loop again. Now, if I had some different situation where these are in play and these aren't in the graveyard, maybe one's being exiled, say the Murderous Redcap's being exiled, or the Vizier has been exiled. What we can do is, well, I'll sack the Karmic Guide. Then I'll sack the Revelark to return the Karmic Guide, to return the Hulk. And now I have a similar situation. I can tutor for something else. So an interesting one that I like is being able to find a Gaunty. Now, the reason I like this is, well, say, it's not as easy in the sense that it doesn't just immediately kill our opponent, but what you can do is continuously loop the Revelark, the Karmic Guide, and the Gaunty. We don't need the Protean Hulk anymore, to be able to effectively mill our opponent to nothing and have access to all those cards. So that's why I like Gaunty in this list for other reasons. But what you have to do when you think of playing this deck is, what do I need, or how am I going to win this game? So it really rewards playing a lot of games with it. And I think if you pick this deck up, you'll find that as well. So that's just a couple of the Hulk lines that I wanted to show off. Now let's talk about some of the different pieces we have working to get a Protean Hulk into play. So one way we can get the Hulk into play is simply mana dorks. We do have a lot of mana dorks here. 9 that cost 1, a couple that cost 2, and a couple other ways that I want to show off here. So we got a lot of mana dorks that just try and ramp into some stuff. Now, of course, they don't just ramp into Hulk. They can ramp into ways to get the Hulk out faster. One is an Academy Rector, which we'll explain quickly, and the Pattern of Rebirth. Now, Academy Rector doesn't have many enchantments that she can get in the deck, but Pattern of Rebirth is definitely one of the top ones. If you have a Pattern of Rebirth, and let's just say it's okay, let's say we have the Rector in play, and we have a way to sacrifice it, so a Carrion Feeder and a Wall of Roots. So this is not in play. This is our board state. What we can do is say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice the Academy Rector. There's a trigger. When it goes into your graveyard, you may exile it from your graveyard. If you do, you can search your library for an enchantment and put that into play. We can find the Pattern of Rebirth. Grab his exile now. And enchant our Wall of Roots with it. We could also enchant the Carrion Feeder. It doesn't really matter, but it's easier if you enchant the Wall of Roots. Then when you sacrifice the Wall of Roots, you get to use the Pattern of Rebirth effect. When enchanted creatures are put into a graveyard, that creature's controller may search the library for a creature card and put that card into play. So that's where we find the Protean Hulk. And then we can go through all the lines that we kind of talked about. The other ways we can get Hulk into play is a natural order. You can use one of your ramps creatures, any of those elves that we looked at. Well, I guess they aren't just elves, some are birds. But any of the mana dorks, you can sacrifice a green creature, say this Wall of Roots, to be able to find another creature and put it into play. Well, another green creature and put it into play, like Protean Hulk. So that's another way we can cheat them out. And I have this Devoted Druid. I didn't really include it in the mana dorks pile, although it most certainly is a mana dork. I just want to separate it because if you do have a Vizier of Remedies in play, you can make infinite green mana here. Simply say, okay, I'll put a -1 counter on. Well, it's less than one less -1/-1 counter on it, which will allow you to say, okay, well, instead I'll put 0 on, tap it, untap it, put 0 on, and you have infinite green mana. That's the way you can ramp it out. Or do anything else in the deck, like use the Green Sun Zenith, a Finale of Devastation, whatever you may have. So I put that just aside for a separate instance. But that's how we're getting that guy into play. Those are the methods. And let's talk about some of the other fun parts of the deck. Okay, I picked out some of the cards that we're using to tutor. A lot we've talked about. Maybe not Demonic Tutor, but it is a 4-point card, and the ability to find anything you need is very strong. And then some of the other tutors. Some are a bit more narrow or more situational, so let's talk about those now. Profane Tutor, I talked about this in a different video, but I think if you aren't playing this card, you definitely should, at least to try it out. I have found this card to be very strong. Diabolic Intent, basically a Demonic Tutor with an additional cost of sacrificing creature. I'll say, conveniently, it can sacrifice an Academy Rector as an additional cost, and then you get that trigger. Some of the creature tutors we have here, Green Sun Zenith, find any green creature, pay an extra green. Court of Calling, it has Convoke, so you can tap your Wall of Roots, or any creature you have, really, to be able to search at instant speed for a creature to put into play. Finale of Devastation, similar to Green Sun Zenith, but it doesn't have to find a green creature, and it can search your graveyard. And if you have infinite mana or 12 mana, it's a big buff to your entire team. And then Eldritch Evolution has an additional cost sacrifice creature. Maybe you want to sacrifice that Rector. Or some creature with the Pattern of Rebirth on it. That's another good point. And then search for a creature with convertiment cost 2 plus X, where X is the creature you sacrifice, CMC. Fauna Shaman, you can discard a creature. We are playing, I believe, 43 creatures in the deck. Let me just check. Yep, 43 creatures in the deck. So a lot of cards you can discard to find the correct creature in the moment. And then some of these very narrow tutors. Stoneforge Mystic is really just an additional copy of the Jite. This is the only equipment I'm running in the deck. The Ranger Captain of Eos, you can use it as, a lot of the time you're using it in conjunction with finding some 1 CMC guy, probably your Viserys here, as well as using it to stop your opponents from interacting with you on your turn. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. You could use it on their turn as well if you think they're going for some combo thing, or stop them in the middle. So definitely a really good one. The Recruiter of the Guard finds a lot of the pieces, but it doesn't find the Hulk. Any creature toughness 2 or less. And that's what we got for most of our, non-land tutors. We have fetch lands as well, but I'm not going to show those off. Okay, let's talk about some of the Planeswalkers. Only 2 Planeswalkers in the deck. Grist the Hunger Tide, a new one from Honor Horizons 2. Garruk Relentless, an older guy, but still really strong. So, one of the reasons I really like Grist, he's always making 1/1s. These black and green insects, they convoke, they block, they do anything. They're an additional cost for your Diabolic Intents. Really strong, and you're milling yourself as well, which when we see some of the other creatures and parts of the deck, you'll see, oh, maybe that will come in handy. The -2, you may sacrifice a creature. So it's kind of the theme we have with the Diabolic Intent. Being able to sacrifice a creature and then destroying some opposing hate piece. Some creature, some Planeswalker, another good ability. The -5, I'll say you could use, but each player loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. You do have a lot of creatures in your deck, and if you're always milling them, it might be just the reach you need. Garruk Relentless, he makes wolves, he shoots even mind sensors if you need. And then on the other side, he has those same lines of text. Sacrifice a creature. Well, this says may. This one, you have to sacrifice a creature if you have one available. And then you can tutor your deck for a creature card. He can also make 1/1 wolves with Death Touch, and then he has an overrun style effect, as well as his -3 ultimate. So I really like these 2 Planeswalkers. There are, of course, others you could play, but these are the 2 that I went with in my list. Some of our removal and disruption here. We have the discard trifecta, Inquisition of Kozilek, Duress, Thoughtseize. I don't know, maybe this is the removal trifecta, maybe Path, but Swords to Plowshares, Fatal Push, and Prismatic Ending. Just really good answers for a lot of what we're facing. So one thing I want to say about this section of the video really is in these colors and with playing with creatures, you have a lot of flexibility. So what I've chosen here are what I find is the best for my metagame, and I would consider a lot of these cards that I'll go through, cards that you can make changes to without affecting a lot of the deck, or a lot of the other pieces of the deck. A lot of these are more utility things that you find maybe won't work in your meta and you want to try something else out on. So Scavenging Ooze, really good graveyard hate. Voice of Resurgence, I like this. You can loop it to keep making tokens in one of your Revel Arc loops, but it also stops or it disincentivizes your opponent from playing spells on your turn. Renegade Rallier, easy way to return something that you need as long as you have Revolt. We have lots of things that are sacrifice creatures, so getting Revolt's pretty easy. Timeless Witness, this is a newer one that I've put in. It is an Eternal Witness for an extra, but if we've milled it with our Grist, or if we have infinite green mana, we can, from our Devoted Druid combo or something, or even just 7, it gives us an extra effect that we can internalize it. So I've liked this guy. Oh, there's the Eternal Witness we talked about just now. Again, another thing you can use to loop. Safi Eric's Daughter works really well with Renegade Rallier. If you need, you can loop these two. There are no death triggers in the deck, but feel free to add some if you want to try. Animate Dead. This is something you could find, as well as Necromancy, with the Academy Rector trigger. Animate Dead also works with Luris, who's over here, but just the ability to have some somewhat tutorable way to reanimate creatures is useful. Necromancy, I want to talk about the wording on this, and feel free to check the Oracle if you don't believe me, but it has a very interesting effect where at the end of turn, you can cast this on some creature. You could cast it to reanimate your Protean Hulk from your graveyard. And then in the cleanup step, there will be a trigger that says Necromancy gets sacrificed. When you do, you're going to bury the Protean Hulk, and you're going to be able to use your cleanup step to trigger the Protean Hulk and get a victory. One of the very edge cases of the deck, but something you could certainly do is just flash this in on your opponent's end step, or even your end step, after your opponent thinks they've, being safe to tap out and use some draw spell. I really like Necromancy. It's a really good card. So just, read the Oracle on that, make sure you know what's going on. But in the cleanup step, you're allowed to win the game. Aether Vial, it's an easy way to cheat some of our guys into play. Works well against control decks, where we just, we'll just keep putting guys out that you can't counter. Priest of Fellrights has on Earth, which gives it haste, and then you can reanimate something from your graveyard. Or if they don't kill it on sight, you're able to just pay 3 life, sacrifice it, return something else. Also works with Luris. Skyclave Apparition. This is a interesting card, so just think of these two triggers as they're obviously different triggers, but this is a really good removal. You don't need to worry about this situation, but if I cast it to, say, exile my opponent's Priest of Fellrights, if you have a sack on the battlefield, you can sacrifice it before you've exiled the card, which means, you're giving up this body as a 2/2, but they're not going to be able to get anything back when they do kill it, because the leaves battlefield trigger will have resolved already. Night of Autumn gains some life, makes a beater, destroys an artifact or enchantment. No problem there. Luris of the Dream Den, what we talked about. There's a lot of 2-drop creatures or effects or spells like the Animate Dead that can be a lot of use, as well as it just being a 3/2 lifelink. Kambal, the console of allocation. I really like this. I've played against a lot of storm decks, and this puts a real kink in that plan. Every time they're trying to do some underworld breach loop, well, they're going to be losing a lot, so they better find the bolt fast. And then Shalai, the Voice of Plenty. Somewhat a pet card, but also really strong. You, Planeswalkers, and other creatures have hexproof. And then if you do have infinite mana, you can just keep pumping every creature on your team. I think that is the deck. So I guess what I'm going to do, a section that I haven't done before, is just talk about some of the card replacements, because it goes really well in line with this section of, well, what else do I have the option of playing, or could I play? So I'll start just by saying this Loaming Shaman, just pretend it's an Endurance. I just don't have one yet, still trying to pick one up. Endurance is really good. You can evoke it and then sacrifice it to sub of your triggers to scry or whatever before the evoke trigger goes off. Granted Abolisher for control or Archon. I'm actually just going to flip through as I talk about it. A lot of these cards have been in the deck and maybe will be in the deck again. I just find that you have so much flexibility in these colors that you can change it from week to week. Evoke again. Echo, you can sack it before the Echo costs. And as such, I think, yeah, like definitely consider some of these. I think there's so much flexibility in, well, your deck with 10 tutors or more tutors. You have a bunch of mana ramp that you can't really go wrong. And these silver bullet answers or just effects that help you improve your deck against what your opponents are playing is really beneficial. So I think with that, that's the deck, and I think we gained a lot of points this recent change. So feel free to try some of those out and make sure the council knows, hey, Protean Hulk is a good card. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.